Notes in the shadows. Amara Patel gently closed the door to the executive floor behind her, careful not to make a sound. The 53rd floor of Onyx Technologies was eerily quiet at 11 p.m. Most employees had left hours ago, leaving only the ghost-like presence of screensavers illuminating empty cubicles. At 32, Amara never imagined she'd be cleaning offices at night while clutching a music composition degree. Life had taken unexpected turns after her father's stroke left her family drowning in medical bills. Her younger sister Priya's education took priority over Amara's dreams of composing for film, so she had set aside sheet music for mop buckets and disinfectant. Another glamorous Friday night, she whispered to herself, pushing her cleaning cart toward the corner office. The nameplate read, Winston Blackwood, Chief Executive Officer. Amara had never met the infamous tech mogul, though his stern portrait hung in the lobby. Stories about his brilliance and ruthlessness circulated through every department. Some claimed he hadn't smiled since his brother died 3 years ago in a sailing accident. Tonight, Amara assumed the office was empty as usual. She slipped in her wireless earbuds, cued her practice playlist, and began her routine. As she dusted bookshelves lined with business awards and technological patents, she hummed along to the melody she'd been composing for weeks, a piece inspired by rainfall on the rooftop of her childhood home in Mumbai. The humming grew into soft singing as she lost herself in the rhythm. Her voice filled the empty office with notes of longing and hope. Cleaning became a dance as her fingers tapped rhythms against wooden surfaces, her voice rising with each verse. "What is that?" The deep voice cut through her music. Amara spun around, nearly knocking over an expensive-looking sculpture. Her earbuds tumbled out as she faced a tall figure emerging from behind a hidden door in the bookcase, a private bathroom she hadn't known existed. Winston Blackwood stood in half-shadow, his imposing frame softened only by loosened tie and rolled-up sleeves. At 45, his dark hair was streaked with silver at the temples, and lines around his eyes suggested sleepless nights rather than age. "Mr. Blackwood?" "I'm so sorry, I didn't realize—" Amara fumbled with her cleaning supplies, mortified. "I'll come back later." "No," he said, raising a hand. "The song." "What was it?" Amara swallowed hard. "Just something I've been working on. Nothing finished." Winston moved to his desk, studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Not anger, but curiosity. "You composed that?" She nodded, already calculating how quickly she could find another night job. "Music was my background. Before this, it reminded me of something." His voice held a distant quality, something I haven't thought about in years. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Amara clutched her cleaning cloth like a shield. "Please continue," he finally said, gesturing to the office. "Don't mind me." For the next 30 minutes, Amara cleaned in painful silence, hyper-aware of his presence as he worked at his computer. The easy rhythm of her routine now felt stilted under his occasional glances. When she finished, she nodded respectfully and turned to leave. "Ms. Patel. Amara Patel. Ms. Patel." Winston stood, hands in pockets. "Do you clean this floor every night?" "Monday through Friday, yes." He nodded, seemingly wrestling with some internal thought. "The piece you were singing, it's unfinished?" "Yes, sir. I've been stuck on the bridge section for weeks." Winston walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "My brother was a cellist. Before he died." The words hung in the air like a confession. "I haven't listened to music since." It felt pointless. Amara stood frozen, unsure how to respond to this unexpected vulnerability from a man known for his emotional detachment. "But tonight," he continued, almost to himself. "For a moment I heard something different, something new." He turned back to face her. "Would you play the complete piece tomorrow night?" "What you have of it?" Amara blinked in surprise. "I don't have an instrument here. There's a piano in the executive lounge, unused since our last holiday party." She hesitated, weighing the strangeness of the request against the intensity in his eyes, a look that suggested this meant more than idle curiosity. "All right," she agreed softly. "Tomorrow night." As she wheeled her cart toward the elevator, Amara felt a strange fluttering in her chest. Not fear of losing her job, but the unfamiliar sensation of being truly heard for the first time in years. Behind her, in the dimly lit office, Winston Blackwood stared at a framed photo on his desk. Two young boys with cellos laughing in the sunlight of a different life. Echoes of understanding. The executive lounge piano gleamed under soft, recessed lighting, its polished surface reflecting Amara's nervous expression. She ran her fingers over the keys, testing their response. A Steinway Grand, perfectly maintained despite apparent disuse. Winston Blackwood stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the city's twinkling skyline, hands clasped behind his back. "I haven't played for an audience in years," Amara admitted, settling onto the bench. Her cleaning uniform felt out of place against the instrument's elegance. "I'm hardly an audience," Winston replied, not turning from the window. "Consider me kate background," Amara took a deep breath and began. The melody started tentatively, raindrops on tin roofs, childhood memories transformed into notes. As her confidence grew, so did the complexity, her fingers dancing across keys with practiced precision. The composition built like gathering clouds, then cascaded into the emotional core that had come to her while scrubbing floors and dusting forgotten corners. When she reached the unfinished bridge, her hands faltered, playing the same phrases repeatedly, searching for resolution that wouldn't come. "That's where I get stuck," she confessed, letting the final note hang in the air. "I can't seem to find where it wants to go next." Winston had turned during her performance, watching with an intensity that might have unnerved her under different circumstances. Now he approached the piano, keeping a respectful distance. "My brother Daniel would say music already knows where it needs to go. We just have to listen closely enough." His voice carried no trace of the corporate authority she'd expected. That's what made him brilliant. He could hear what others missed. "What kind of music did he play?" Amara asked, sensing the conversation was as much about healing as it was about composition. Classical primarily, but he experimented with everything. Jazz, folk traditions, even collaborated with electronic artists. A ghost of a smile touched Winston's lips. "Our parents pushed me toward business and him toward performance from childhood. They created the perfect CEO and the perfect artist." "And were you close?" Amara ventured. "Inseparable, despite our differences. Until 3 years ago." Winston's expression clouded. "A sailing accident off the coast of Maine. He was filming a documentary about coastal communities affected by climate change. The storm wasn't forecast." Amara nodded, understanding loss intimately. "My father's stroke came without warning, too. One moment he was laughing at dinner, the next," she trailed off. "Life changes so quickly." Indeed. Winston moved to a credenza and poured 2 glasses of water, handing one to Amara. "Your sister, you mentioned her yesterday?" Amara blinked in surprise that he'd remembered. "Priya, she's studying biochemistry at State, brilliant mind. She's researching neural regeneration, inspired by our father's condition. And you gave up your musical career for her education." It wasn't a question. It wasn't really a career yet, Amara shrugged. Just expensive dreams and impractical ambitions. Priya's work might actually help people someday. Winston studied her with unexpected gentleness. "Yet you still compose, despite everything." "I can't seem to stop," Amara admitted. "Music follows me everywhere, in rain patterns, in subway rhythms, even in the sound of buffing machines on marble floors." She laughed softly. "Probably sounds ridiculous." "No," Winston said thoughtfully. "Daniel was the same way. The world spoke to him through sound." He hesitated before adding, "Tomorrow night. Would you be willing to try something different? I have some of Daniel's unfinished compositions. Perhaps a collaboration?" Amara suggested, surprised by her own boldness. Winston nodded, the faintest light rekindling in his eyes. A conversation between past and present. As Amara left that night, her cleaning rounds completed in record time, she couldn't help but wonder about the strange turn her life had taken. The formidable Winston Blackwood, feared by executives and employees alike, seemed altogether different in these quiet nighttime hours. More human, more wounded than his public persona suggested. What began as an accidental musical encounter evolved into nightly sessions. Sometimes they played music, Winston sharing his brother's recordings while Amara improvised alongside them. Other nights they simply talked. Winston described Daniel's boundless enthusiasm for life. Amara shared stories of her father's philosophical wisdom and her mother's gentle strength before cancer claimed her years earlier. 2 weeks into their unusual routine, Amara arrived to find Winston uncharacteristically agitated, pacing the executive lounge with phone in hand. "Everything all right?" she asked, setting down her cleaning supplies. "The Singapore merger is collapsing," he said distractedly. Investors getting cold feet after the prototype demonstration glitched. 2 years of work potentially wasted. Amara nodded sympathetically. "I should give you space to work tonight." "No," Winston said firmly, setting down his phone. "This hour has become necessary." He looked almost embarrassed by the admission, like breathing. The simple confession shifted something between them, an acknowledgement that these meetings had become important to them both. More than musical exploration or casual conversation, they had become a sanctuary of genuine connection in lives otherwise defined by obligation and solitude. That night, Amara finally completed her rain composition, the bridge section flowing naturally as she incorporated subtle elements of Daniel's style. When the final note faded, Winston remained silent for a long moment. "He would have liked you," he finally said. "Your authenticity, your persistence despite circumstances." Amara smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with music and everything to do with being truly seen. "And I think I would have liked him. You Blackwood brothers seem to have depth that doesn't make it into the company newsletters." For the first time, Winston laughed, a rusty sound as though long unused, but genuine. Neither could have predicted how quickly their unlikely friendship would be tested, nor how profoundly it would change them both. Discord and harmony. The corporate restructuring announcement came without warning. Onyx Technologies would be outsourcing all building maintenance services, effective immediately. Current staff would need to reapply through the new contracting company, with no guarantees of position or comparable wages. Amara received the news along with her colleagues during an impersonal morning meeting led by Evelyn Hargrove, Onyx's razor-sharp head of operations. As Hargrove detailed the exciting new partnership with minimal compassion, Amara felt the floor tilt beneath her. The night shift differential pay had been crucial for keeping Priya in school and managing her father's ongoing care. Any reduction would be catastrophic for her family. "Questions?" Hargrove asked perfunctorily, already gathering her presentation materials. Was Mr. Blackwood involved in this decision? The question left Amara's lips before she could reconsider. Hargrove's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "All executive decisions pass through the CEO, of course, though I fail to see how that's relevant to your position, Ms. Patel." Heat rushed to Amara's face as colleagues glanced at her curiously. For 3 weeks, she had spent hours in Winston's company, sharing music and memories. Not once had he mentioned plans that would upend her livelihood. The betrayal stung with unexpected intensity. That night, Amara arrived at work with determined professionalism. No music sheets accompanied her. No composition ideas filled her thoughts. She moved through her cleaning routine mechanically, avoiding the executive floor until absolutely necessary. When she finally reached Winston's office, she found him waiting, Daniel's cello recordings playing softly in the background. "You're late tonight," he observed, then registered her expression. "What's wrong?" "The maintenance outsourcing," Amara said flatly. "When were you planning to mention it?" Confusion crossed Winston's face. "What outsourcing?" "Please don't," Amara interrupted, anger flaring. The entire custodial staff was informed this morning. Effective immediately, we're all essentially terminated with the opportunity to reapply for our own jobs at what will certainly be reduced wages. Winston's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "I had no knowledge of this. You're the CEO. Who delegates operational decisions to department heads while focusing on product development and overall strategy?" Winston countered, reaching for his laptop. "Give me a moment." Amara stood rigidly as Winston typed rapidly, his expression darkening with each passing minute. "This was Hargrove's initiative," he finally said, "implemented using standing authorization protocols while I was in Tokyo last week." He looked up, genuine regret in his eyes. "I should have known. I should have been paying closer attention." "It doesn't matter," Amara said, the fight draining from her voice. "This is how the world works. People like me are budget lines to be optimized. I was foolish to forget that, even for a moment." "Amara, I need to finish my shift, Mr. Blackwood." She retreated behind formality. "The rest of the floor still needs cleaning." For the next several nights, Amara avoided the executive lounge entirely. She cleaned Winston's office efficiently while he was absent, leaving no trace of her presence. The composition they'd been developing together remained untouched on the piano, a silent testament to what had briefly existed between them. On the fourth night, Amara found a sealed envelope on her cleaning cart. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "Please listen." WB curiosity overcoming her hurt, Amara plugged the drive into her phone during her break. What played wasn't music, but audio from an executive meeting. Winston's voice uncharacteristically forceful, addressing what sounded like the entire board of directors. "The decision to outsource maintenance was made without proper consideration of our company values," his voice declared. "Onyx was founded on principles of innovation and human potential. We cannot claim to pioneer the future while disregarding the well-being of those who make our daily operations possible." The recording continued, as Winston systematically dismantled the financial justifications for outsourcing, presenting an alternative restructuring that would preserve jobs while actually improving long-term operational efficiency. By the recording's end, the board had unanimously voted to reverse the outsourcing decision. As Amara returned to her duties, emotions churning, she found Winston waiting beside the executive lounge piano. "You recorded a confidential board meeting," she said quietly. "A meeting I called," Winston corrected. "You were right to be angry. Not just about the decision itself, but about my disconnection from its impact." He gestured to the piano bench. "Please." Hesitantly, Amara sat down. Winston remained standing, hands in pockets. "These weeks of music and conversation have reminded me of something Daniel understood implicitly, that true innovation isn't just about technology, but about human connection." Winston's voice carried the weight of realization. "I've been running this company like a machine, optimizing parts without considering the whole." "Why show me the recording?" Amara asked. "You could have simply told me the decision was reversed, because you deserve to know it wasn't charity or favoritism. You deserve to hear that your perspective changed something fundamental in how this company will operate moving forward." Winston finally sat beside her on the bench, careful to maintain respectful distance. "And because I missed the music." The simple admission dissolved the last of Amara's resistance. Wordlessly, she placed her hands on the keys and began to play the piece they'd been developing together, Daniel's themes interwoven with her original composition. Winston closed his eyes, listening with characteristic intensity. When she finished, he spoke without opening his eyes. "I have a proposition for you, one that has nothing to do with our friendship and everything to do with your talent." Crescendo of change. The Onyx Technologies cultural initiative launched with uncharacteristic speed for a corporate program. Within weeks, empty office space on the building's 20th floor transformed into a state-of-the-art music education center, open to employees, families, and neighborhood youth alike. Instruments appeared, practice rooms materialized, and scholarship applications flooded in from hopeful students across the city. Amara found herself in an impossible position, offered the role of program director at a salary that seemed surreal compared to her custodial income. The opportunity dangled before her like a mirage, tantalizing yet frightening. "I can't accept it," she told Winston one evening in the nearly completed center. "People will think it's favoritism." Or worse. Winston, inspecting the acoustic panels being installed along the walls, didn't immediately respond. When he did, his voice carried unexpected vulnerability. "Do you remember telling me about your father's philosophy?" How he believed talent unused is a form of ingratitude to the universe. Amara nodded, surprised he'd remembered a late-night conversation from weeks before. Daniel believed the same. Winston continued. He used to say that when we bury our gifts, we deprive others of light they might have found through us. He turned to face her fully. This program needs someone with both musical expertise and understanding of accessibility barriers. Your background makes you uniquely qualified. Your degree, your teaching experience before your father's illness. And yes, your perspective as someone who had to set dreams aside for practical necessity. And our friendship? Amara asked carefully. Is separate from this professional opportunity? Winston assured her, though I won't pretend it didn't help me see the potential impact of such a program. He handed her a folder. The board approved this initiative unanimously, with full funding for 5 years regardless of who directs it. If you decline, we'll conduct a proper search. The choice is entirely yours. That night, Amara sat with her sister and father in their modest apartment, the folder open on their small dining table. Priya, home for the weekend from university, read through the proposal with widening eyes. This is legitimate, Amara, she whispered, as though speaking too loudly might make the opportunity vanish. This is everything you've worked for. Their father, his speech still affected by the stroke but mind sharp as ever, tapped the table decisively. Take it, he managed with effort. Your turn now. But your care, Priya's tuition. I received full scholarship last semester, Priya interrupted, looking slightly guilty. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd insist on cutting back your hours, and you needed the routine. She squeezed Amara's hand. You've carried us long enough, Didi. Now we can walk together. Tears blurred the contract before her as Amara realized how completely her perspective had narrowed over years of sacrifice. She'd been so focused on supporting her family that she'd forgotten they wanted fulfillment for her as desperately as she wanted it for them. The following day, Amara signed the contract. Within months, the cultural initiative became Onyx's most visible community outreach program, drawing attention from industry publications and local media alike. Employees brought their children for lessons. Neighborhood schools arranged field trips. And talented youth from underserved communities found mentorship and professional connections previously inaccessible to them. Through it all, Winston remained deliberately removed from daily operations, careful to avoid any appearance of undue influence. Their evening music sessions continued, but evolved. Now they developed curriculum pieces, analyzed teaching methodologies, and occasionally hosted small gatherings where promising students performed for Onyx executives. The transformation extended beyond the cultural initiative. Under Winston's increasingly hands-on leadership, Onyx began reassessing all operational policies. The cafeteria hired from local culinary programs for marginalized communities. The company established a healthcare clinic in the building's ground floor, serving both employees and neighborhood residents. Executive bonuses became tied to community impact metrics alongside traditional financial indicators. You've created something remarkable, Amara told Winston 6 months after the program's launch, as they watched a young string quartet rehearse Daniel's compositions. We have, Winston corrected, his expression thoughtful, though sometimes I wonder if it was really Daniel's influence all along. He smiled faintly. He always said I'd remember what mattered eventually. And what matters? Amara asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Connection, Winston replied simply. To music, to purpose, to other people. He glanced at her with uncharacteristic uncertainty. Speaking of connection, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you. Something personal. But before he could continue, his assistant appeared with urgent news. A potential security breach in Onyx's newest product line, requiring immediate attention. The moment passed, leaving Amara to wonder what Winston had intended to say. That evening, reviewing student applications in her office, still surreal to think of the space as hers, Amara discovered a folder she didn't recognize. Inside was a photograph she'd never seen, Winston and Daniel as young men laughing on a sailboat. Beneath it lay a handwritten composition titled simply, "For AP," in Winston's precise handwriting. As she played the piece on her office piano, Amara recognized it immediately as Winston's first original composition, tentative but genuinely emotional, incorporating themes from their collaborative work while expressing something entirely new. The final page contained not music, but a note. Music gave me back my brother. You gave me back music. Perhaps it's time we discussed what comes next. Dinner tomorrow? W.B. Amara sat in stunned silence, the note trembling in her hands as she realized how profoundly their accidental meeting had altered both their lives' trajectories. Tomorrow would bring a new movement in their unusual composition, one neither could have anticipated, but both had been unconsciously writing toward all along. Symphony of New Beginnings. 2 years later, the Blackwood Patel Foundation celebrated its first anniversary with a gala concert featuring young musicians from across the city. The foundation, established jointly by Winston and Amara shortly after their marriage, had expanded the cultural initiative's mission beyond Onyx Technologies, creating satellite music education centers in 3 underserved neighborhoods. Backstage at the Grand Hall, Amara adjusted the bow tie of a nervous 12-year-old cellist named Joaquin, the foundation's first scholarship recipient. "Remember what we practiced," she encouraged. "Music isn't about perfection. It's about honest expression." "But what if I mess up in front of everyone?" Joaquin whispered, eyes wide. "Mr. Blackwood brought important investors." "Then you'll have told a more interesting story," came Winston's voice as he approached, program notes in hand. "My brother's most memorable performances always included at least one unexpected moment." He knelt beside the boy. "Besides, those aren't just investors out there. They're people who believe in what music can do. Like we do?" Joaquin nodded, straightening his shoulders with newfound confidence before heading to the stage. "You're good with them," Amara observed as they watched from the wings. "Better than you are with most adults." Winston chuckled softly. "Children haven't learned to be impressed by stock valuations or intimidated by corporate titles." "It's refreshing." He squeezed her hand. "How's your father doing today?" "Having the time of his life." Priya brought him early to get the best seat in the house. "His speech therapy is showing remarkable progress." Amara smiled at the thought of her father, now living in the accessible apartment they'd purchased near the foundation headquarters, serving as unofficial grandfather to every student in the program. As Joaquin's cello solo began, Daniel's composition reimagined through young hands, Amara reflected on the improbable journey that had brought them here. From night shift custodian to foundation co-director, from grieving executive to engaged mentor, they had transformed each other's lives through that first accidental connection. Winston's company had transformed too. Onyx Technologies had become a case study in corporate responsibility, with Winston regularly declining interviews about the shift. "The work speaks for itself," he would say, redirecting attention to the foundation and its students. The board hadn't initially understood his insistence on community investment and inclusive hiring practices. Several directors had resigned in protest when Winston announced that executive bonuses would be partially determined by social impact metrics. But as employee retention improved and positive publicity attracted both talent and investors, even the most skeptical directors acknowledged the approach's effectiveness. After the concert, as students mingled with donors over refreshments, Evelyn Hargrove, still Onyx's head of operations but significantly evolved in her management approach, approached Amara with genuine admiration. "I fought this program at every turn," she admitted candidly. "I couldn't see how music education connected to our core business." "And now?" Amara prompted. "Now I understand it's about creating ecosystems rather than isolated products." Evelyn gestured to where Winston stood deep in conversation with a retired music teacher who'd volunteered with the foundation. "He's not the same man who took over after his father died. Back then he was brilliant but mechanical, all strategy, no soul." "People change when given the right environment," Amara suggested. "Or the right partnership," Evelyn countered with knowing perception. Later that evening, alone in their home overlooking the river, Winston and Amara sat at their dual pianos, a wedding gift they'd given each other, custom-built to allow them to play facing one another. Between them stood a framed photo of Daniel alongside one of Amara's parents in healthier days. I had a call from the Westridge Symphony today, Winston mentioned casually, though his expression betrayed excitement. They're interested in commissioning your rainfall composition for their spring program. Amara's fingers stilled on the keys. A full orchestral arrangement? With you as featured pianist, if you're willing. Winston watched her process the news. You don't have to decide immediately. It was never about recognition, Amara said thoughtfully. Even before circumstances forced me to set music aside professionally, I composed because I couldn't not compose. She smiled at him. Much like you can't help improving systems once you see their flaws. Speaking of systems, Winston began, transitioning to another topic with obvious enthusiasm. Priya's research team has been making remarkable progress. The neural regeneration trials are showing unprecedented success rates in cases similar to your father's. She mentioned they'd received additional funding, but didn't say the source. Amara gave him a knowing look. You didn't... The Blackwood Patel Foundation made an anonymous contribution to the University Research Fund, Winston clarified. Completely above board and properly vetted by independent reviewers. Priya's work earned the grant on its own merits. Amara shook her head in fond exasperation. You're incorrigible. I prefer to think of it as strategic investment in human potential, Winston countered with the hint of a smile. Something I learned from a very wise night shift custodian. As moonlight filtered through wide windows, they began to play, a duet they'd composed together, interweaving themes from their separate journeys into something entirely new. The music spoke of loss transformed into connection, of isolation giving way to community, of rigid structures softening into fluid possibility. In the quiet moments between movements, Amara reflected on the unlikely melody that had brought them together, her soft singing in an empty office, his unexpected presence in late-night shadows. How strange that the most significant turning points often arrive disguised as ordinary moments, recognizable as pivotal only in retrospect. What are you thinking? Winston asked, noticing her contemplative expression. That sometimes the universe places exactly the right people in exactly the right moment, Amara answered. And that the true art lies in recognizing the opportunity when it appears. Winston nodded, understanding perfectly as he often did now. Daniel used to say something similar, that life's most important harmonies are rarely written on the page. They emerge from improvisation and attentive listening. As they continued playing, their music drifted beyond the room, beyond their home, into the night air, a testament to transformation that began with a simple melody heard in shadows and blossomed into a symphony neither could have created alone. In corporate boardrooms and foundation classrooms alike, they continued rewriting old narratives, demonstrating daily that the most powerful changes often begin with the simplest connections. One person truly hearing another and having the courage to respond in kind.